Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the February 2014 meeting of the Abingdon, Virginia Town Council. I'll ask one or two things real quick. First of all, if you have a cell phone on tonight, put it on stun or whatever is the appropriate terminology for that, so we won't be disturbing each other during the course of the meeting. I will point out that we have an agenda available this evening. Copies of it are at the door where you come in. There will be an opportunity tonight during the course of the meeting to receive comments from the folks that are here that may wish to bring some item before the Town Council that is not specifically on the agenda. We'll give folks a chance to speak. We do have the ability to limit the length of the comments and so forth, but there will be an opportunity for folks to speak, and that is listed as items not on the agenda. That being said, I will ask our clerk please to call the roll.
Mrs. Deering? Here. Mr. Howard? Here. Mr. Humphreys?
Here.
Mrs. Lowe?
Here.
And Mayor Morgan?
Here.
And let the record reflect that all 5 council members are present.
Thank you. I see this evening that Mr. Greg Kelly, our town manager, will be leading us to the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, stand please.
Everyone will please join me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would note we have on our agenda tonight, always during the course of the meetings, or during most of the meetings that we have, there's a special section where we have employee acknowledgments and recognition. And usually it's a happy occasion where we point out, the accomplishments of some member of our staff who has attained some educational program, or sometimes someone who has served us long and well and looks forward to a retirement. But tonight we've had another situation where two of our long-term employees, Officer John Wolf of the police department, he passed away unexpectedly on December the 23rd, 2013. He had worked for our town for 26 years. And on the 28th of this past month, John Krieger Jr., who has worked in our town's Wolf Creek water reclamation facility, he also passed away unexpectedly, and he had also, like Officer Wolf, had worked with our town for the past 26 years. And we certainly want to recognize those folks this evening. Mr. Kelly, would you care, as their director, ultimately their direct supervisor, would you care to make any comments regarding these folks?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of public, it is indeed an honor to have been the town manager and had both of these exemplary employees work for the town of Abingdon. Officer John Wolf was a true gentleman. He was an easygoing individual and would carry on a conversation with just about anyone, very low key, very dedicated to his children and I believe grandchildren. And it was just an honor and a pleasure for me to have known John. I knew him both personally and professionally, and it was one of the most disheartening things that I heard when he passed. And my heart goes out to him and his family, and I think the fact that I knew John Wolf and got to work with him, and I thank him for everything that he did to make the town of Abingdon a better place to live and work in. Relative to Johnny Krieger, I've known Johnny all my life as well, and he was a man that certainly had a smile on his face and a joke to crack anytime that you would ever see him. I don't think I ever saw that man in an unhappy state or an angry state. And he was very cordial with everybody that he came in contact with, both that worked for the town and that didn't work for the town. He lived life largely, and I believe I heard, I don't want to misquote anything, but I believe I heard that despite the fact that he died at a very young age of 55, that a comment was made by his father, well, he put 100 years of life in 55 years. And I got to tell you, knowing John, and I think all of us that knew John can probably attest that that was indeed the case. Both of these individual deaths were shocks to us. They were unexpected, and my heart really goes out to their families. And again, I'm grateful to have known them, to have worked with them, and for everything that they did for the town of Abingdon. And with that said, we have two other individuals, Mr. Mayor, that might like to offer some comments. We have Chief Sullivan, who was the direct supervisor over Officer John Wolf, and we have our Fire Chief, John McCormick, who got to work with John Krieger on the fire department. As we know, probably neglected to state, but not only did John work for our Wolf Creek water reclamation facility, but he was also a lifetime member of the Abingdon Fire Department. So if, Chief, would you like to have some comments?
Sure. Police officers are unique people, and boy, John Wolf was one. You don't meet many police officers who have a bachelor's degree in art and who can teach in the high school level. As with most artists, John had his ways. There were a couple things you didn't talk about. You didn't talk about the University of Florida because he was a huge Gator fan. And John was a peacemaker. I preach, be quick, be efficient, be professional. If John could take 30 minutes and talk it out as opposed to 5 minutes and take somebody to jail, he would always choose 30 minutes. And that didn't rub me the wrong way because we need that. He was a fixture in this community, and he was loved by so many people in this community. And he's going to be missed. In our department right now, there's a hole in our department, been there for a month, that we've got to try to fill. And you know, when you lose experience of 26 years, and when you lose somebody who was raised in this community and went to high school here, and you know, people knew him and knew his family for generations back, that's when the department sort of loses touch with the community. So the challenge right now is for us to replace that. Even though we'll never replace someone with that uniqueness. Many of you know John had cancer a number of years ago. John did not miss a day's work for chemotherapy. I came in several times on midnight shift just to check on him, and this is what I'd find. And I'd say, John, just go home. He'd go, let me sleep for 30 minutes, listen to the guys for 30 minutes, and I'm out of here. And I'd listen to the radio for 30 minutes, and he was out of there. Then he'd get off work at 8 o'clock and he'd go walk 2 miles or a mile, whatever he could do on the creeper trail, because he didn't want chemo to beat him, and it didn't. Sometimes in life you get off early for good behavior. I think John Wolf got off early for good behavior. He doesn't have to suffer. He's not going to spend time in the hospital. He's not going to spend time in a long-term care facility. He lived a good life, and he lived a productive life, and we value what he gave us. And we appreciate the contribution that he made. And we appreciate you all taking this time to recognize it.
Thank you very much. Chief?
As you said, Johnny Krieger also grew up in the fire department like I did. His dad and my dad served together for many, many years, and I had the privilege of working with his dad and Johnny. And as Mr. Kelly said, he had a personality that was above everybody. What he said he meant, and in a fire situation, I wouldn't want to go in with anybody else. He knew his job. He loved what he did in the fire department. He loved what he did for the town also. He was just a great person to know, and he'll deeply be missed.
Thank you very much. I'd ask at this, are there others here that may wish to make any comments about these two gentlemen and their passing? Then I'd ask we have a brief moment of silence, please, as we reflect on these two gentlemen and their lives and their contributions to this community. And and ask for the blessings on their families. Thank you. Mr. Kelly, would you care to continue?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The next item we have on the agenda is a bittersweet item, but it's an uplifting item. We're here tonight to be able to recognize and appreciate the longevity of an individual who's devoted much of her life to the town of Abingdon, Miss Patsy Owens. She worked for the town for 32 years, and she will be terribly missed by all of us who've known her. I've known her a long time, long before I ever, I guess, came to work here with Abingdon. When my father worked here, I got to see Patsy on occasion, and I know that she did a great job in the planning department. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you also did some work at the police department for a little while. Yes. And Patsy, it's just an honor to say that somebody worked for the town for 32 years. You obviously loved your work, and the people around here loved having you here for those 32 years. At this time, I'd like to ask that you come forward. We have a few things that we would like to present to you. And again, I want to thank you for all that you've given to the town. You've devoted a tremendous amount of your life to the town, and we're thankful that you're here to receive this award. I know that because of the weather and some health issues, you weren't able to come at the end of the year or the first of this year, but you were gracious enough to come back tonight, and I'm very, very thankful. I'm so tickled that I got to know you and I got to work with you for the few years that I did. So if you'll come forward, I've got a few things to give for you. To you.
Oh, God, what? It's not clean.
First thing I want to give you is one of the town seals has been signed by all the council members and myself, and as the years of your service here with the town of Abingdon. And I hope you like the frame and everything. I hope you'll display it. I hope you will display it proudly. All right, I'm going to set it down now, and then we're going to get you to hold it up and get a photo with you. We also have a beautiful clock that we would like to present to you as a commemoration of all the time that you put in here with the town of Abingdon.
And we might note that, instead of she's been such a valuable employee, instead of giving her a mere gold watch, we've given her a gold clock.
Just so it doesn't alarm.
All right.
Well,
Very much.
and then you're probably going to have to get your husband to help you carry all this stuff out of here. But we have a nice little card and something special in there that we hope you enjoy in your retirement. And on behalf of the town staff and the town council, I want to thank you for serving.
Okay, come on, let's tighten up here now. All right, we got everybody here. All right.
And I would also, Mr. Mayor, if it would be permissible, I'd like to maybe get Mr. Jackson, since he was her direct supervisor, to come up and have a nice photo taken with
I think it would be very permissible, and we might all kind of reassemble back.
Good chin.
I got all year, maybe next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your service, all you've done for us.
Thank you.
Don't set the alarm.
So I take this with me or I'm going back to get it? Thank you so much.
There may be a box.
There was no box when I came in here, so they must not have pass it for it. I want to try to get it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. That was a little bit happier moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, council, we have two sets of minutes for our consideration tonight. The January 6th, 2014 work session meeting, as well as the minutes from the regular meeting that was held on that same evening. Are there any corrections or additions that are noted for that occasion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion regarding these minutes.
I'll entertain a motion that we approve both sets of these minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve both sets of minutes for those that date. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you. Well, excuse me, I will abstain.
All right.
I was not present for those meetings, and it would not be appropriate for me to vote on it. Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to item number K, which is reports from the town manager. And we have presentation and request for extension of the what is officially known as the King School of Medicine, more recently better known as the Southwest Virginia School of Medicine Agreement. I think Mr. Tarek Zadie, who is interim president of the institution, is here this evening. And Mr. Kelly, would you care to lead us through this process, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, if you will recall, the town of Abingdon made a financial commitment to the King School of Medicine, now the Southwest Virginia School of Medicine, of financial support of total of $7.5 million, $4 million of which was land in the Small Business Technology Park, and $3.5 million was in cash. We did that in conjunction with a partial match to the Virginia Tobacco Commission grant to the School of Medicine of $25 million. Washington County initially also participated in that and offered $7.5 million in a cash contribution toward that. We had an agreement that had various dates in it. The date with us actually expired, I believe, the 16th of January. And I believe Mr. Zadie is here to ask that we consider amending our agreement with them to let it be carried forward until such time as he goes back before the Virginia Tobacco Commission in May, at which time we are very hopeful that this project will then actually be moving forward in a strong fashion. And with that said, I would ask Mr. Zadie if he would offer some comments, and if I misstated any dates, I'm sure you will correct me on those.
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kelly, Mayor, Town Council. It's always a pleasure to be here. As I was sitting thinking about what I was going to say, the project has really taken on, during the course of my involvement in it since May of 2012, has really taken on three different phases. first phase in May, starting in May and through the end of the year and really into the beginning of 2013 was the transitionary phase, where we transitioned the project into an independent entity to try and bring this project forward and to do a little due diligence and see if it had really legs to come to fruition. The second phase was really one of redesigning the project and taking a look at what the needs of the community were, what they are, physician shortage needs, workplace development, economic impact needs, and to talk with other people who really knew about the project, other institutions, and to see if there was a path forward that made sense in a number of different ways, that was able to allow us to accomplish the goals of trying to solve the needs of physician shortage needs in Southwest Virginia, create jobs, be an economic stimulant, really hit all those issues which are on everybody's mind: healthcare, financial, all of those issues. And we did that, and we spent a lot of time taking a look at how we can do this project in an economically feasible manner, not just to build it, but to maintain the project for a long term. Because as we go through this project, I think the vision that you all had is the vision that we have, and it's this century-long project. I mean, this is not a short-term project, and it's one that's going to be viable and one that's going to grow. When you take a look at what's happened in other medical schools across the country and to the towns and the communities that they have been to, they've started in, it really has been a real benefit. Couple that with the Affordable Health Care Act, and as everybody knows, there are going to be more folks enrolled in and have availability of insurance in the coming months, whether it's necessarily in Virginia, in Tennessee, in Kentucky, West Virginia, all around. There are going to have to be physicians that are going to serve them. And so we felt that as we looked across, we wanted to find a path forward that would allow us to address those needs, accomplish the same goals, but do it in a fiscally responsible manner. And I think we've done that. And I think as we embark upon 2014, I think we'll see that 2014 is a relaunch of this project in a manner in which people just haven't seen before. We're now, what gives me great encouragement, and that I hope gives you all great encouragement, is the fact that today we have what I believe are the right partners around the table talking about this. We have Emory and Henry College that's embarking on their Health Sciences Center. They have come to the table in a big way and are going to play a major central role in this project, to the point where they're willing to commit resources to this project. The first time you get an institution that's ready to stand up and say, we're behind this, and we've got resources, and we're bringing them to the table, and they are going to be significant. At the same token, we had the pleasure of meeting with the University of Virginia, both the university, the medical school, and its healthcare system in December of 2013, and we had a tremendous meeting with them. What struck me about that meeting more than anything was they had spent a significant amount of time internally discussing this project and discussing Southwest Virginia. It was clear when we went to that meeting they were prepared. This was not just a, hi, how are you? We appreciate what you're doing and we'll get back with you on this. This was a serious meeting that had a serious discussion points to it. To the point where we were going to the Tobacco Commission on January 6th, and we asked if we could report about this meeting, what could we say? And the response of the EVP of Health said, you may stand up and tell them that we have had a serious discussion and want to engage in continued and active discussions about this project. We are concerned about Southwest Virginia, and we, in the healthcare and workforce development of Southwest Virginia, we are seriously committed to being part of the solution. And that's their words, not mine. We are currently scheduling 2 meetings, which we expect will take place in February. We expect to sit down with them again. We expect to sit down with folks in Richmond who have now renewed interest in this project. Really, the discussions that we've had have been incredibly encouraging, not about what the project is about, but how do we make it happen. We're still having discussions with ETSU, and I think what shows about that is we've got the people at the table who are Emory and Henry, UVA, they're Virginia, Southwest Virginia. That's the people that should be at the table. This is their community, and they know how to do it. The Tobacco Commission, when we went to the meeting on January 6th, it was the best Tobacco Commission meeting we've had. I think people are very encouraged by the fact that we're there, and I have to thank personally Mayor Ed Morgan, who went on behalf of the town and stood up with me and spoke very highly about the project and about the town of Abingdon's commitment. Emory and Henry was there. They stood up and spoke, and we had a letter from the University of Virginia. They weren't able to be there, but they were represented and let everybody know that they were interested in the project. So I think as we move into 14 and as this period goes forward, we're having a lot of ongoing discussions with Emory and Henry, not about, is this a good idea? Do we want to get involved? How do you do it? It's how do we put this together? How do we put this together in a way that benefits Abingdon, that benefits Southwest Virginia, and that benefits the people of Southwest Virginia? That's markedly different than the conversations that we've had to date. We've also had conversations from private donors who are now saying, I am committed financially to this project. We're sitting down talking with them about what that's going to mean in terms of actual dollars. But we have had discussions, again, for the first time where they say we are in. They're also making calls to politicians. They're making calls to other people saying, this is a project that we really need to talk about. So I'm really encouraged by this project. I think by the time we report to the Tobacco Commission in May, it's going to be, again, another very strong meeting. I know that everybody knows Washington County's decision not to continue on with the project at this time. I have to tell you, 3 or 4 months ago, I believe that would have been a death knell for this project. In fact, I have no doubt that it would have been. As I stand here today, I think as we look back, that's a blip in the road. This project has not suffered because of it. And I think by the time we get to the Tobacco Commission in May, we are going to be financially in a position with respect to a match where we are even stronger than we were before that. That's the report. I know you have it in writing. We have the preliminary architectural report done. Provided a copy to Mr. Kelly. And we are asking again that we would like to continue on in partnership with the town, asking for an extension of the amendment. I believe the way that I drafted the amendment is that it would essentially mirror what the Tobacco Commission does. And as long as the Tobacco Commission provides extensions, we would piggyback along with that. So that's my report. I stand here, I think you can probably tell I'm more encouraged than I've ever been with respect to this project, and I feel very, very strongly about it, and hope that you do too. If anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
I'll make just 1 or 2 brief comments, and then we'll see if there are any questions. I was very pleased that I did have the opportunity to attend the Tobacco Commission meeting in Richmond, and it was very clear that the Tobacco Commission remains committed to this project, that they were pleased that progress was being made. The involvement of Emory and Henry, I feel like, was one of the key ingredients as far as the Tobacco Commission went in terms of stating that this was a project that was real and credible, and that one that they wish to continue to support. As I understand it, what you're asking of us this evening is that we would continue our commitment to this project as long as the Tobacco Commission, in essence, is committed to it. You're not asking for any financial contributions or anything at the present time. It's basically a commitment that we will stay the course with this as this develops, and as long as the Tobacco Commission is committed to it. Is that a correct statement?
I couldn't have said it better.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions here, folks, that Mr. Zadie, while we have him? All right, perhaps I would entertain a motion regarding this matter. Perhaps that we, would continue with our commitment, paralleling the Tobacco Commission's continuing support for this.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we extend the deadline agreement to the May 6th Tobacco Commission meeting?
The meeting is actually, I think it's either the 21st or 23rd.
To the mid-May Tobacco Commission meeting.
I'll second your motion.
Okay. All right.
May I?
You may.
I don't know if it's appropriate. Could we get an extension into June so that we come in and the date is still good? Because if it ends in May, then we'll have a lapse. So
until the council meeting in June. I will amend my motion
Sounds good.
Okay, all right, very good, and I'm sure we're going to be in a good place by then. Okay, we have a motion and a second to extend our agreement to the King School of Medicine, doing business as the Southwest Virginia School of Medicine, until the June 2014 meeting of the Abingdon, Virginia Town Council. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your continued efforts. Okay, that brings us into consideration of an appropriation of council contingency funds for the recent presentation by Mr. Ed McMahon, who was Senior Fellow at the Urban Land Institute in Washington, D.C., who made a presentation to both our council and related commissions and so forth, as well as many other representatives of Southwest Virginia, on the ingredients of successful communities and economic development in the 21st century. Mr. Kelly, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, if you'll recall, Mr. Ed McMahon was here in Abingdon to do a separate presentation at Hartwood for 2 days. And as a result, we were able to get him to do a private presentation to leaders in local government at the Southwest Higher Education Center. We were able to get Mr. Mann to do his presentation to us for the sum of $1,000, which was a real bargain for the quality of information that was presented to us. I felt like that he did an excellent job in presenting that. Because of the timing of things, we had to plan that in between council members in order to get him here. And what I'm asking tonight is just that council confirm that they would appropriate $1,000 to pay Mr. McMahon from the council contingency.
Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll move that we appropriate $1,000 to pay Mr. McMahon from the council contingency.
A second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion or comment? I would note that I think it was an extraordinarily useful presentation that the gentleman gave, and I was very pleased that we were able to have so many representatives from governments in southwestern Virginia. Bristol, Tennessee was represented as well.
Bristol, Virginia was represented.
Yeah.
The town of Marion.
Yep. Carroll County, I think, had representatives, Chilhowie.
Withfield.
And it's the sort of presentation that can have, I think, lasting impact on communities around southwestern Virginia. Any further discussion about this? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Mr. Kelly, we have an item here, report on the timetable for the upcoming fiscal year 2014 town budget process. Would you care to take us through that, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, it's that time of year where we begin preparing for the 2014-2015 budget year, which will take effect on July 1, 2014 and run until June 30th of 2015. At the work session earlier, I presented council with a timetable of events that start moving very rapidly beginning the first part of March. We will have non-departmental requests that will be due in on March the 1st, departmental requests that will be due in on March the 3rd. Our audit should be ready to be presented at the March 3rd council meeting. I will then be meeting with department heads the week of March 10th to talk about and develop their budgets. And I believe that council agreed to set various dates for upcoming work sessions to meet with both department heads, myself, and non-departmental folks. And because of all the conflicting schedules that we went through downstairs and the fact that I did not keep notes, but I know Ms. Rosenbaum did, I'll let her report on what those dates are.
You give me the easy part, right? As it stands right now, we're looking at budget work session dates to be held on the evenings of March 24th, March 25th, and March 27th. The March 27th one will be when council will hear from the non-governmental requests. All the meetings at those dates will be starting at 6:30 p.m. And then we will also, council may also need to deliberate on April the 7th at 5:30 on non-departmental requests, but that's a regular work session date for us.
26th to the 25th.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I typed it down wrong, the 26th, not the 25th. Yeah, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday of that week.
Okay, is there any action that we need to take on that, or any further comments, Mr. Kelly?
I don't think that it requires any formal action. Just throw that out to the public, because those work sessions will be open meetings for the public if they desire to attend.
Okay, thank you very much. We have with us this evening Mr. Sean McMurray, who is Chief Executive Officer of Johnston Memorial Hospital, and I believe it's Ms. Ely who was with him this evening regarding a resolution for our council to consider supporting a Virginia plan to increase access for the uninsured. Would you all care to comment on that, please?
Sure. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, thank you for having us here tonight. Just a little bit of background. We're at essentially a crisis in healthcare, and we're facing many challenges. It's not just Johnston Memorial Hospital, but it's industry-wide. Several years ago, when the Affordable Care Act was passed, the original discussion was that while healthcare providers would receive cuts to their reimbursement, that there would be expansions in coverage to help cover the uninsured, and that would help to compensate for the losses in reimbursement. Well, to date, that hasn't happened. We've seen no expansion of the Medicaid program in Virginia or the TennCare program in Tennessee. We've not seen a significant number of enrollees in the health insurance exchanges, and the provision that required employers with more than 50 employees to offer health care insurance was pushed out into the future to a yet to be determined date. So essentially, we are already facing the reimbursement cuts for our services, but we've seen no additional access to health care insurance for the uninsured. And so it's really created a very difficult challenge. I'll share with you the numbers impacting the Johnston Memorial Hospital. We anticipate that in fiscal year 2015, that the reimbursement cuts related to the Affordable Care Act will impact us negatively to the tune of over $4.1 million. And then in fiscal year 2016, that number increases to $4.7 million if we do not receive any increased access to the uninsured. And so with that in mind, Stacy, you want to just share, I know you had a couple thoughts.
Really, the resolution that is before you, it talks a lot about closing the coverage gap. And I wanted to explain a little bit about what that means. As an industry in Virginia, we know that a full-blown expansion of Medicaid is not fiscally responsible, and it's not the right thing to do. That being said, there are 1 million uninsured Virginians, and there are federal dollars out there to insure those folks. And the resolution before you asks for your encouragement of the General Assembly to close the coverage gap. And the coverage gap essentially means there are folks who do not qualify for Medicaid because, you know, a childless adult, for example, would not qualify for Medicaid. That person may be working and their employer doesn't offer them insurance, and that person also may not qualify for the tax credits through the marketplace, through the exchange. So those folks don't have any options. And that was an unintended consequence of the Affordable Care Act. So the resolution before you is simply encouraging the General Assembly to find a way to close that coverage gap in a way that they see fit. There are a number of discussions in the General Assembly right now about private options. Let's pull down some of those federal dollars and enroll those folks in private insurance. There are a number of states that have done that. There are a lot of creative ways, and this resolution is really a way for you all to express your support for ensuring those who will be uninsured in our region and become part of a larger coalition with chambers of commerces and other local governments across the Commonwealth. This resolution is very similar to some being passed all over the state. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I'll make a brief comment, and then we may have other questions. But I also work in healthcare and have been for, gosh, I'm almost 28 years. And the problem that you're describing is very real. I deal with patients on a daily basis who are quite low income, but they make too much money to be covered under the Medicaid system as it exists right now, and they really cannot afford to buy insurance on the health exchanges that is out there. I know that the anticipated expansion of the Medicaid system would have provided health care coverage for those folks, and it really, when you're dealing with people particularly who have severe chronic illness, it's a terribly expensive and financially ruinous thing for a lot of the families that are involved. And then you have health care providers, whether you're a hospital or a respiratory care provider, that finds you're responsible for providing some level of indigent care, and it's a tough situation right now. I know that Virginia's Medicaid system has gone through a series of changes over the last few years, where much of this in Virginia is being now handled by managed care insurance companies rather than the traditional Medicaid system that has existed in the past, and I hope some efforts are being made to control costs and so forth in that regard. But I think the problem that you're outlining is very, very real and having a serious impact on the citizens of all of our state, our county, and certainly our town. And as I understand it, again, I have the resolution here for our consideration, but as I understand it, you're not necessarily advocating an expansion of the traditional Medicaid system. You're basically asking our legislators to take this problem seriously and look for a solution that will provide some level of assistance and coverage to the uninsured who can't afford it.
Okay. That's right.
Thank
and
you.
We also recognize, Mr. Henry, that the Medicaid program needs a number of reforms, and those are already ongoing. And we supported those efforts from the beginning, continue to support those efforts. It's certainly not a perfect system. We recognize that, but at the same time, we need some help.
Okay. Are there others that may have some questions or comments about this?
Not at all. Something we need.
Okay. I'll tell you what, I will read this resolution into the minutes, please, if you'll bear with me. And we have for our consideration a resolution of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, supporting Virginia plan to increase access for the uninsured. And whereas a healthy workforce and community are critical to the economic vitality of the Abingdon community, and whereas over 1 million Virginians under the age of 64 are uninsured, many of whom are in families with at least one full or part-time worker who aren't provided health insurance coverage through their employers, can't afford coverage on their own, or don't make enough to qualify for insurance offered through health care exchanges, and whereas these uninsured Virginians receive care which is subsidized by employed Virginians through higher insurance premiums, providers charging more to the uninsured for their own care, and underwriting of the uninsured care by providers. And whereas this cost shifting will continue to rise faster than inflation of the Commonwealth if the Commonwealth does not address ensuring more Virginians have access to affordable health care coverage. And whereas through 2022, Virginians will send $29.7 billion to Washington, D.C. through mandatory federal Affordable Care Act related taxes, fees, and provider payment cuts to pay for the uninsured in other states. And whereas the Commonwealth has the ability to recoup these funds to help its own citizens by developing a Virginia plan to control growth and reform the current Medicaid program, reduce cost shifting from the uninsured to Virginia businesses and their employees, force individuals to take responsibility for their own health, improve the quality of care delivered by paying providers to manage care rather than paying for a volume of care, shift the risk of Affordable Care Act implementation off of Virginia taxpayers if the federal government reneges on its commitments and reduce waste, fraud, and abuse of government programs more effectively. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, that it hereby supports and encourages the Virginia General Assembly to develop and implement in the Commonwealth of Virginia plan to provide more Virginians with access to affordable health care coverage and services, and to take advantage now of receiving federal funds for this implementation, which would provide a significant boost to Virginia's economy and provide local taxpayer relief. Council, what is your pleasure regarding this resolution?
Mayor Morgan, I move that we adopt the resolution supporting the Virginia plan to increase the access for uninsured.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to adopt the resolution as was read into the record. Any further discussion or comment? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you very much. We appreciate your efforts, and hopefully we'll see some relief for the citizens who really need some help on this.
Thank you very much.
All righty, thank you. Okay. And let's see, our next item is also a resolution of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, for the purpose of adopting a code of conduct requirement relative to a grant by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to the Abingdon Police Department. Chief Sullivan, or could you talk with us about this, please?
You want me to do it?
You may have to read it, because I don't bring the glasses, but I will tell you what this is.
That's what I offered him.
We were recipient of a $25,000 grant. Of course, that's a matching grant for a vehicle purchase from USDA. I'm in the process now of going through the reimbursement to get the money back. And one of the things that they required was a code of conduct resolution on the part of the town to be approved by council. And if you would care to read the resolutions, that would be nice.
Well, I'm going to let Vice Mayor Lowe read it.
A resolution of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, for the purpose of adopting a code of conduct requirement relative to a grant by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to the Abingdon Police Department. Whereas on October the 7th, 2013, the Council of the Town of Abingdon adopted a resolution supporting an application to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Rural Development to provide funding for a police vehicle and equipment purchase project, and whereas the Abingdon Police Department has been notified that they have been awarded the grant to assist with funding for the police vehicle and equipment purchase project, and whereas the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Rural Development requires the Council to adopt a code of conduct that states that no employee, officer, or agent of the owner shall participate in the selection, award, or administration of a contract supported by Rural Housing Service funds if a conflict of interest, real or apparent, would be involved, and now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, that it hereby adopts the Code of Conduct as required by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Rural Development relative to the funds rewarded for the police vehicle and equipment purchase project. Say that real fast 6 times.
She sells seashells by the seashore. All right. Thank you. Nicely done, nicely done. All right, so basically it says that we're going to use good business practices and not have conflict of interest in any of the purchases that might be made for that. I'll entertain a motion regarding this.
I'll make a motion, we approve the resolution as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. All right, and that brings us to matters not on the agenda. Now, prior to, is there anything that our council members have that is not on the agenda that needs to be discussed at this point in time, or matters that need to be raised?
As a council member report, or just an
No, just as a, something that may require some action, or, okay, we'll come back to that. We're going to hear, I suspect, from the public in just a minute, but I would ask Mr. Jackson if you would come forward for just a minute. You're not counting on this, but I have a matter that I want to ask you about that I think might be useful. Okay. We had a meeting last week with some of the folks that live up on Lowry Drive that had a series of concerns about a business that was located in the area and the impact that it was having on their neighborhood. And one of the things that we talked about at that time that I would like to have sort of brought out here this evening was the fact that we, as a result of these discussions we've had with the folks in the community, found it appropriate to examine the ordinance that we have, the zoning ordinance that covers the light manufacturing district and the activities that are permitted there. Now, we know some properties currently are zoned for that particular use, and changing that is something that is a little bit difficult, but we do have some ability to control the types of activities that are permitted in those zones, and it's my understanding that the Planning Commission is moving forward very quickly to try and take some action on some of those activities that are permitted. Would you care to take it? You weren't expecting to do this. Yeah, get your material. Yeah, let's do that. It might be a little more efficient for everybody. If you could comment about what you and the Planning Commission are looking at the present time, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. At the meeting on January 23rd in this room with some residents from Lowry Drive and Stone Mill Road, one of the items that came from that meeting was that...
Can everyone hear back there? Okay, let's work on that.
Is that better?
Yes, sir, I think so. I was seeing nods back there.
One of the items that came from that meeting was that the town would address its light industrial zone, which we've had on the books since 1955. In addressing that, as we promised the residents around that community we would, we immediately went into the zoning ordinance, and if it's okay, I will read this. The zoning ordinance that's on the books now was adopted as it is, other than piecemeal adoption since, was adopted in July of 1993. So this has been on the books for a while, some of these changes. There have been some changes in 97 and also in 2007. But to the limited industrial district, there have not been any changes since 97. The uses by right, which is what the mayor was referring to, would be uses that by law are allowed within any district, in this case the limited industrial district or the light industry district. Some of those uses as they are on the books now are assembly of electrical appliances, electronic equipment, devices, radios, phonographs, including the manufacture of small parts. 2, automobile painting, upholstering, repairing, rebuilding, reconditioning, body and fender work, also includes vehicle and mobile homes. The manufacturing, compounding, processing, packaging, or treating of such products as bakery goods, candy, cosmetics, dairy products, drugs, perfumes, pharmaceuticals, perfumed toilet soap, toiletries, food, and tobacco products. The manufacturing or assembling of products from the following materials: cellophane, canvas, cloth, cord, fiber, glass, leather, paper, plastic, straw, textiles, wood, or yarn. The manufacture of pottery, or figurines, or other similar ceramic products using only previously pulverized clay and kilns fired only by gas or electricity. The manufacture of musical instruments, toys, novelties, and rubber and metal stamps. Wholesale businesses, as well as storage warehouses, veterinary hospitals and kennels, cabinets, furniture and upholstery shops, seed and feed stores, laundry and dry cleaning plants, correctional institutions, laboratories, pharmaceutical and or medical, general offices, parking lots, public utilities, and accessory uses, as well as mobile home parks and beauty salons.
So just about anything and everything is permitted by right at the present time in those districts. Is that correct?
In the light industry district. Correct.
All right.
What we've done is after that meeting we went back, and Mrs. Eisenhower and I looked at the ordinance, and it was fairly easy to do this and it not be an issue. Number one, with the law, and number two, with the current makeup of the light industry districts as they are. we took the sections 2 through 6, which includes all the automobile painting, upholstering, the manufacturing, the processing, the compounding, as well as the laundry and dry cleaning plants, the correctional institutions, laboratories, pharmaceutical, and medical labs. Took all of those and switched them over into a special use category, which would require a trigger that if anyone wanted to do any of those uses, they would have to go through a series of public hearings to the Planning Commission as well as the Town Council, which all the neighborhood folks would be, say in this instance, if somebody wanted to do that down there and this was on the books as we're presenting it, all of the neighbors who are adjacent and/or adjoining that property would be notified. As it is, they're not notified because they have a permitted use on those properties. But this would cause a trigger that would alert both town staff, the neighborhood, that there are more steps in the process than just signing business licenses or getting building permits. It would require neighborhood action. So this is the quickest way we can get something on the books to prevent any sort of expansion of the particular business that's being discussed right now, which they have no.
When you say expansion, you mean expanding from the mere storage of products to the actual processing of products.
Right.
So in other words, if this was enacted by, recommended by the Planning Commission and acted on by the council, before anybody could start processing anything there, they would have to go through a very extensive process and ultimately have a special use permit from the town council to make that happen.
It would take up to 3 months and involve 2 very large public hearings and lots of mailing.
All right. Now, somebody's trying to get my attention. Am I missing something
I
else?
was just going to say, Mr. Mayor, you know, Virginia does, and Ms. Eisenhower can speak to this as well, but it does have the vested rights ordinance, which would mean that anybody who has that current use in place would be vested for a period of 2 years.
Okay.
If they're currently acting.
If they're currently acting in that business. So the present business is not acting in that business, and nor has the property been put to that use in the past 2 years. So it would not be a vested use for the manufacturing or the mixing component.
Let's say the millworks up the street could continue to operate.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. In other words, if you were currently doing those things, you could continue to do those things unless there was a gap of 2 years of not doing it. But we're not talking about an activity that is taking place at the present time. So if these ordinances or amendments to these ordinances were enacted, it would provide some greater control over what would happen at that facility.
Correct. And the schedule we have it on, we have a public hearing on Monday, February 24th at 5:30 here at Town Hall.
Is that part of the Planning Commission on the 24th? So interested parties might want to attend that.
And then the Planning Commission would then recommend either approval or disapproval to the council at the March meeting, March 3rd, here at 7:30. And then after that first reading, council would read it twice. So it could technically be on the books by May, I suppose, after the 30-day waiver.
Okay. All righty. So we are, as part of this process, examining what is permitted by right and attempting to create a situation where there would be more special uses permitted consistent with what the ordinance is now, but the special use permit process is very extensive in terms of what could be permitted.
Right, and I think looking back on it, going back on history, the way our light industry districts were developed, they were developed in areas that were mostly agricultural, very little residential. This particular one was developed in 1955, so it was around before the homes were down there. The issue, though, that looking at it, though, is that the town has obviously grown tremendously. Lots of residences and businesses that aren't particularly compatible with industry like that. So this is sort of a reactionary, proactive move to get this in line with what we have.
And if I recall correctly, when many of these ordinances were written, they basically looked at what activities were actually taking place in those areas at the time, and essentially, said that they're happening now, so we will continue them to happen. And times and situations have changed over the years, and it's appropriate to re-examine some of these things as circumstances change. And I thank you very much. Council, do you have questions of Mr. Jackson of this matter I put him on the spot about? Thank you very much. I appreciate your help. Okay, we do have a situation right now. We're at the point in the agenda where we're prepared to hear comments from those who are present that may wish to bring matters to the council's attention. We would ask that you limit your comments, please, to 3 minutes tonight. But we are prepared to hear you, and if there is anyone who wishes to address the council on any particular matter right now, they're welcome to come forward. We would ask that you use one of the microphones either there or up front and state your name and address for the record, please. Very good, sir.
My name is Dyer Moss. I live at 167 Hill Drive here in Abingdon. And I'm here to encourage you, town council members, if you haven't already, to develop a plan to cull the deer from this city. Now, they're one of the primary hosts of Lyme disease. If you hit one, even at 25 miles an hour, it's probably going to come through your windshield. So they are a danger. Not a week goes by that we don't have at least 5 at a time in our backyard. Now, we're not rural. We're just up the street.
Yeah.
Just as today at noon, I saw 6 of them in that little hilly part and woody part of Church Street. In my yard, I can blow a horn at them. I can yell at them. They're a little irritated, but they certainly don't do much about it. And what I'm worried about is they're going to be starving if we don't do something about it. I think they've gone from being acute to being a nuisance. And I hope that you'll think about this.
Thank you. We may be a relatively urban area, but we have deer issues, we have vulture issues, groundhogs, and
and possums,
and skunks, and an occasional bear.
I have gardened for 70 years. I have now retired because of the deer.
Yeah.
Groundhogs, rabbits, raccoons, and now deer, and they just decimate your garden. So I'm through with that. I hate to say it because I love it. But.
Well, I hate to hear you say it, but I thank you for reminding us of this issue. I think one of the things that always amazed me was the time I saw a fawn lying dead at the corner of Cummings and Main. And, it just, we are seeing a change in patterns and so forth, and I would encourage our staff to examine this issue. I know the Virginia Tech has a special department in the wildlife management area that addresses the issue of urban wildlife, and I do think we need to be examining this, and perhaps our planning staff could look at it and give us a report sometime a little bit in the fairly near future about this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Moss, we appreciate it. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council this evening? Mr. Macbeth?
Shocking. Yeah, it's Rich Macbeth, 1139 Panorama Drive, Abingdon, Virginia. I just want to announce my candidacy for being on the Board of Town Council coming up.
Very good, sir. We thank you, and we know that you will work hard, and you certainly have taken a strong and continued interest in the activities of our town. Thank you very much. Are there others that wish to address the council? Okay. Anybody else? All right, we thank you. I know we'll be in contact with some of you folks here in the near future. That being said, Council, I believe we have several appointments this evening. We have appointments for The Economic Development Authority, we have an appointment to fill the expired term of Mr. Macione, who declined reappointment. We have reappointment of Milton Maiden, who is eligible for another term. We have 2 appointments for the Tourism Advisory Committee, also the Board of Architectural Review. What is your pleasure regarding these matters? Do we wish to make appointments, or do you wish to go into executive session to consider this?
Maybe both, but I will move that we reappoint Milton Maiden to the Economic Development Authority, Marcy Miller to the Tourism Advisory Committee, and Carson Jackson to the Tourism Advisory Committee.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to reappoint Mr. Milton Maiden to the Economic Development Authority and to reappoint Ms. Marcy Miller and Mr. Carson Jackson to the Tourism Advisory Committee. Is there any further discussion regarding this matter? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay. I'll entertain the motion, or do you wish council to go into executive session for further consideration of these appointments?
May I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir, you may.
This is to Ms. Rosenbaum. Have we gotten any applications in for any of these positions?
There is one in your packet, should be attached in your packet that we received. That's the only one that you have, though. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 for the purpose of consideration of appointments to the Economic Development Authority and the Board of Architectural Review.
All right, is there a motion? We have a second to go into executive session for the consideration of those 2 appointments, and that would be in pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 for consideration of appointments. Any further discussion? I'll ask our clerk to call our roll.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, council, do you think we could get by with a 5-minute assembly time here?
We could use the trap door if you want to.
We can call it training.
Fire training.
Yes. Let me just come around. You know, we could probably do this better.
I'm not sure he's not. Particularly pleased with the involvement of Henry in this project. Interested in shot on this. It's also clear away that the organization recognizes as well as he has these opportunities. And those continue to put out support for this project.
It's all team counter. The quality of care is not top.
And also recognize it's something that you're having all the troubles, getting together and so forth. But I was, they did the second workshop. So it's watching, they will revisit this in the future. And I hope that it takes, but, we're particularly along this, we've put an awful lot of investment in this project.
He laughed all the way down the
Okay.
Well, hang around. Just be Oh, absolutely. Is it closer to Lake Huron or Lake Huron? Must be. Blue Water Bridge. He's on the island. Yeah, that is a nice thing. It's not city. Oh, okay. So 16, yeah, Well, no. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did too, but they were, one was outside the state, and one was, both of them were outside.
Oh.
Yeah, they're pretty much boys.
I wrote down, Carl, but these are in the county bad.
They were from Butler and out of the county. I'm that black one, black You will know. Your plastic housing on the outside.
Yeah, well, if I went 17 years ago, good investment.
The squirrels can be ridiculous.
Our lifetime is
Well, they just fall down and splat.
But it's a shame that.
Actually, the vultures are actually.
It's been too close, they migrated off the section.
The traffic out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yes. Exactly. Which is good.
It's gonna be a full line.
That I don't really understand.
Yeah, they should have just full line. Why did they go with full line?
Because what they could have done is put in, a turn lane or whatever, or a passing lane occasionally,
But all the truck traffic.
I don't know what they're.
That's why I said they'd be better off with 90 instead of 58. I mean, that was crazy.
It's gonna be a nightmare.
They take it every day out. They have a buyout.
Make sure it is. I'm just looking at it at construction. That's what I said. Contract. I'm just looking at it. Bridge there. It's just a tremendous amount of work. My opinion, just moving the bottom there from 19, it's just taking it down 17 miles or whatever. This wouldn't do Damascus. Knock half of them out, you have to get around it.
I gave up on that.
No no sense whatsoever if they were smart. Well, it's a.
In Minnesota, they have.
We've done
That's what you are. Main Street is.
Where'd you go?
They got to outlaw our neighbor. That's all.
It is Nasal Ranger Field.
In fact,
No, it was like it was like black balls or something. Yeah, police officers. See, they didn't understand.
I think I read that in a
Because anything that be pronounced.
The ratio has to be set
Yeah.
evolution, the threshold D to
I can believe it, and I
observation is
can
not less than 15 minutes.
None of us were there for years.
Well, there you go.
I guess our
I thought
traffic problems
pictures
around
were 1,000
Abingdon
words.
are quite that bad, but it is.
I'm not afraid they have stranger stuff.
Wow, Landon Walls, it is nuts.
You like it, don't you? You're going back to see it. Almost, most states do not.
you carry it in with you on Sunday to church and you want to go. You stay, get out.
Somewhere rather than say. But it's so hard to get people to use it.
It's not really.
To develop our doctor functional.
You have
Well, I have a friend.
exceeded the
Yeah, well, I have a friend who teaches that.
I use it as far as they're line at the grocery store.
We're taking care of the design. Besides that, you know, take care of the manufacturing.
Yeah.
They're still.
They don't have it hardly. I'm trying to suggest, see, the best thing to do is try to make people walk in on the jar and say you can sample this stuff and then go, you know, and swoosh it around, spit it out, and say, there you go. That's what it is. There's no sample.
Yeah, why don't you, why don't you go and do that?
That's not nobody got one.
That's what I'm saying to me, I want to
That's right, and I demand
The contract goes to the lowest bidder, that's the problem. It's always,
How do you define the process?
official roads like that.
They go over and start moving it around.
If they open it up and
The Gardner Expressway, that.
But they're not processing
But
it.
if they try to, they should, then you can
I
start.
read their papers
actually,
every morning.
actually is.
For the longest time, it's been breaking down. It's concrete, but all the salt sometimes. So the rebar started to go,
I think they can
well,
resell it.
nobody did anything, and then recently, a fairly large chunk fell on the lawyer's cars.
Oh, but that's.
And all of a sudden, it was like, dig till, in which,
I'm gonna cut
so,
it down.
yeah, and it, but it certainly,
Fried up.
no, not happened in my family, but no, but the idea,
I mean, some things stink bad enough without one of these big old.
and unfortunately, what again, it's planted.
Now I have to snip it.
Really have.
Violates.
That's sniffer, very own sniffer.
If this sniffer doesn't think it smells bad, I don't care what your big sniffer thinks.
Basically cuts off access.
But if this sniffer thinks it smells bad, I don't want that sniffer to sniff it again.
All the industry is on the waterfront. It's still there, and now,
Yeah.
what do we do? Because they'd like to get rid of it. But it's still unnecessary evil. It's probably one of the few cities in North America that
This is
really
the worst jointed bit of the
central part of the city. There's highways,
Shanghai.
yeah, because it drives me nuts when I think of the wonderful cities in the United States. I mean, it's only destroyed by violence. I said, what was the big rush stream when we lived there? You know, the Erie Canal was open around the city. Well, they're brilliant. They drained the canal, moved it so it was south of the city. And then they made what was the canal bed into called the interleaf. Basically, it's a moat around the core of the city. Now, well, must be close to 40 years, I guess. Since they did that. And they finally, you can't have whether it is or not, psychologically buried.
You know, before you got here, they actually told us something that sort of, they couldn't run their.
And the Alberts on one side will not go to the other side.
Oh, they called.
And it's a shame, there's a lot of.
They can't do
stuff
that. No
action.
Yeah, they can. Or they will increase the rate. Well, we got a sign that says no longer under deal. I said, that does not apply. That does not apply to people in wheelchairs. Sorry. But yet they'll let horse walk on there, put the horse crap on it.
And then Kitty goes down, like last
And rolls in it.
year. Rolls in it, and came home with a lovely Christmas dress. On my walker.
First of all, you know why she did that? Because you were making her wear a dress. She's got fur, and she knows it.
It's just a collar. It wasn't really a dress, but it had
Well, my brother and I had that.
and they were hanging in the school.
Occasionally.
Especially for
She got out when I was still walking.
Actually, there's so
She got
much
out
to
one
help
day.
with
Installing and they came and they just popped it over.
these are all farm communities.
Where's my dog?
They went over the truck a little while ago. You think there was some land shortage? That's so dense. It's phenomenal.
Frantic. About the time I got outside of Walker,
Throw that one in.
it came up.
And another one of the big problems. Canada's pretty open immigration policy. And you say, okay, you want to come, go out and live in Saskatoon for 5 years. You're either Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver. It's a great place to grow up.
They couldn't give her a bath in bed, so.
They had to wash
That's what you get when you don't.
Yeah, sure, they all whatever.
Well, they were talking about that, I guess, Coca-Cola commercial.
Yeah.
Where they sung in different languages, which would have been fine if at the end they all sung in English or something. But people were just and it is so politically correct how you address this. The last thing the United States that's the one thing. Everybody will come there. People come here and the one common thread is they've gotten rid of every other thread. And to lose that, it's just, in my lifetime, I'm in my 60s now, and I remember working in a grocery store when I was a kid. And at the time that Lester D. Pearson was prime minister, when Canada started to go bilingual, and camel soup. My grandfather he was French. Oh, I thought he was all the kids they put on. You want to take inside pills all over? You want to drive away.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Teenagers just ask. Teenage boys ask. You can have a whole selection. Is the language of the government. Another acts, and then
Which one should I use?
Sport Fresh, Charlie.
Basically.
You get people learning English. Make it on English.
Kitty was shampooed in herbal essence. She really does.
How dogs smell one way, they smell dry and they smell wet. It doesn't matter, it's just, once you use it, you think he doesn't smell like He's an animal.
Kitty's half chow, so she's still a little delicate, but
You know, and I struck him down some of that good stuff that's in the house, you know, smells like Christmas cookie or peppermint or whatever. And then all you do is, once you get him all lathered up, rinse him out, and he smells like a Christmas cookie with a hound dog. And it's an awful. So you gotta see. So I'm to the point now, I charge me $40 to trim his nails in the bay. So about twice a year, I take him to the vet, and we do a nail trim, because he smells whatever they use. Like industrial strength. He still doesn't smell good, but he doesn't smell bad. I swear, he smells like that. He smells like Doritos. You wake up.
I see.
He sleeps on it. It's like, you'll be laying there and as you wake up, it's like there's this smell of nacho cheese Doritos and you're thinking, and then you lean in and it's the dog. And I was like, what he eats? But he smells just like Doritos. Somebody came over the house and I was telling that he was asleep. He smells like Doritos.
You need to make your own Doritos.
for the Super Bowl. There you go.
Although I won't play well, he smells just like Doritos. I get everybody come in and smell him.
We know you'll love him.
Yeah, well,
Sit him up here, something like that.
Last year.
and it really is a shame because what they.
Well, I watched the documentary Pride, so I know.
They're dependent on the.
I like goats.
Have you seen the Goat Dorito commercial? You need to look at it. You really did. It's
Nice.
hilarious.
Free goes.
Free goat?
Yeah, look at free Goat Dorito commercial.
When we lived in the city.
It's hilarious.
It's really a shame because
Goats are smart.
something happened.
Yeah, this one.
They're smart as can be.
This was new when you're out of Doritos.
You know, great, wonderful little kids, but then at some point,
Which way the other?
they're old.
He was mad.
And
Which are,
it's on
this week.
it's one of my closest friends, the lieutenant governor, well, lieutenant governor there now. Was almost less crazy.
Yeah.
That's right. You know, I thought the
This guy was the hurricane mountain, Monday,
but,
and, he lived on roller coaster
I
road.
don't know why, you know, people aren't, especially in history, his coming in there, draws, CGI that's up here in Lebanon.
Had one like 43, 44,
Part of 42, and they had a small operation.
That's my opinion.
So
We used to house that walked down the chest.
I love that, you know, people were great, art was great, art,
I think that's a good idea.
never lived in more expensive, so the weather's, especially if you try to do executive.
He's 5'3", about 140.
Cost of
Little kids have a
living,
dog and football tackles
just for
in the
property.
middle of the yard.
I said, it starts being shocked.
Is this big Ed?
You got more people who would ask it.
Exactly.
She's 42.
Yeah, well, over
Down
here,
in Chicago.
I thought it was the.
but over here,
It is.
it's on me, and my taxes are still less than half of what they
They're
were
reading
17 years ago.
Rarely
In
you
the
see
summer.
finger marks on
On the survival?
it, real prominent. And,
It's just, it's
she
so
woke up,
unsustainable.
she came
And then
to,
Cuomo
because he was
said,
kicking her in the ribs.
if you're conservative,
And she started, she don't know, he stomped on her ankle and left.
when did it
She
become
falls herself over the house, calls 911.
There were a lot of social things that were.
Actually, we didn't go to see, just
Where was this?
Spending
What were you
good
doing?
money after bad.
we didn't go see, and attempted first degree murder one, but the magistrate seemed to think that yours. Because he was apparently, since I haven't seen him, since we were educated, he knows how they work.
Look,
Well, it looked in there.
when,
That's what I said.
you know, when I looked at the figures, they were pushing and the success
They
rate.
locked out.
Thank you.
They locked them out. back in the door, they couldn't let
I've
you
never
out.
felt so safe in my life.
That's your safety. Yeah, but see, the thing is, you go in there to protect yourself. Right?
Get out. Right, exactly. Take it out the door and run in after you.
Never safe.
Okay.
Like the wrong way.
He survived the gunshot, but he was killed with the door slamming in his head.
Okay. All right, Council, I'll entertain a motion that we go back into regular session.
So moved.
Is there a second? We have a motion and second to go back into regular session. Ms. Rosenbaum, please.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I'd like to ask for clarification on who made the motion and who seconded the
Either
motion.
me or Rick.
Okay, is that all right?
Well, one, we said the same thing, so one of us made the motion and
One
the other made the
seconded.
second.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right, Mrs. Deering,
Aye.
Mr. Howard,
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Ms. Lowe?
No, I was calling the roll for the motion.
The roll,
Yeah.
aye.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna cheat you out of your eyes.
Thank you.
Mrs. Lowe. Mayor Morgan.
All right, it sounds like it's time to go home. Okay, I would ask. I'm going to ask it here. I would ask we all certify that we only went in there to talk about things that we said we were going to talk about.
And took no formal action.
And took no formal action. All right,
I so certify.
I so certify.
I so certify.
And I so certify.
and I'll certify as well.
Oh, no.
Okay.
And cheated him out of it.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, and I'll short circuit the other part of the process. After lengthy discussion, we decided to do nothing. And we will not be making any appointments tonight. Okay, that brings us to council member reports. Mr. Humphries, anything this evening?
Just one thing, Mr. Mayor, something I forgot downstairs, and something I think that the council will want to take notice of, the pots with trees.
Yes.
And that's not trees with pot, are out on the streets. There, I think there may be 3 wells that will also be, will receive trees. There'll be just 3 tree wells on the street. They'll also receive trees. I do not think that those have been put in yet. But as you go by, council, look at those and see what you think of those. The tree commission is open and ready for any suggestions. There are other tree wells around town that trees could go in. I just think that they've been hesitant without guidance to go ahead and just automatically put trees everywhere that up and down the streets. So it might be something that you want to look at and talk to the tree commission about, even maybe have Mr. Sigmund here to discuss it with him sometime. That's it.
I would offer one suggestion in that regard, which is I've spent a little bit of time recently up on the Lowry Drive area, and in the past there was a terrible accident that occurred on Lowry Drive, and our tree commission planted a series of trees up there to visually narrow the street and so forth and help as a traffic calming effort as well as beautifying the neighborhood. I've noticed some of the trees that we planted up there have died and need to be replaced, and I would encourage the planning commission, or excuse me, the tree commission, to look about planting some additional trees on that area as it relates to the, I guess, the western end, of Lowry Drive. Anything further?
That's for me, that's all.
Vice Mayor Lowe.
I just wanted to ask, or, I'd send an email to see if we wanted to attend that caucus dinner, but, we already have reservations, and it was just a question as if we wanted to, but it appears that we already have reservations at someplace. So I'm all right I just wanted to ask the question if you wanted to go or not. I'm okay either way.
I'm willing to go home. And I think that's probably a reasonable plan, that you've got to just keep the original arrangements that we made. Does anybody have any objection to that? Okay, anything else? Okay, Mr. Howard?
I don't believe I had anything tonight.
Ms. Duran?
No, thank you.
And I don't
Thank you, but no thanks.
by golly, I don't think I've got anything to add to the mix tonight either.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move that the meeting adjourn.
Well, how about for officially read the announcements of
Okay.
upcoming events,
Sure.
several of which have already happened, and that will shorten it. And then, by golly, I think you could talk us into going home. On February the 5th through the 7th, we will be attending the Virginia Municipal League Legislative Day in Richmond, and we'll be speaking with our legislators about a number of issues concerning our town in southwestern Virginia. On the first Thursday program will be held on February the 6th around through town. I would know that the Arts Depot is having their annual 6x6 fundraiser that night. A lot of art there, excellent art at at $36 a piece. Let's see, the Winter Soup Cook-Off will be this Saturday, I believe, at the Higher Education Center. Spread the Love at William King Museum is February the 9th. There is a blood drive at the Coombs Center on February the 14th. Town offices will be closed on President's Day, which is February the 17th, and the budget cycle it will come around again with a deadline for non-departmental budget requests on March 1st of this year, and there will be the next council meeting will be scheduled for March the 3rd, 2014. Does anybody else have anything else? Hearing none, I will honor Mr. Humphrey's suggestion. Well, I'll not even seek a motion. I will declare us adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all for coming and your patience.